Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the Senate Education and Youth Committee meeting to order. Senator Payne, if you would lead us off in a prayer.
Let us all pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, and we just thank you first and foremost for all your many blessings to each and every one of us in this room. Lord, just please bless us and guide us as we go through this meeting today and through all our actions today, that we would always reflect you in all that we do. First, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We've got a busy agenda in front of us today. We've got several bills we're working through as we have crossover day coming next week. The first bill on the agenda is SB 147. Senator Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, as you probably recall, we presented this bill with its final edits last week. There have been no changes to it. I believe we addressed all the questions that we had at the time, and I got some exciting news about somebody who wanted to testify in favor of it, but I do not see him here. Is there anyone here from the Gale organization? No. Okay. They did tell me, and I'm not misquoting when I say that they were going to speak in favor of this, and we're very appreciative of all the work that we had put into ensuring that their concerns had been met. But essentially, just recap, this allows for a school system transfer using only the QBE dollars, not the equalization dollars, and it keeps it very clean and clear as to where that is going to go. And happy to take any questions.
I have one. 15. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question, Senator Still, and thank you for all of your hard work on this. If one of our existing virtual academies has and it may only be one, has a contract with the State Charter Schools Commission, would they be able to operate in terms of student enrollment under this, or would their contract with the State Charter Schools Commission be the operative document?
Is there a specific example of that? Because in the metro area where you and I are, I'm not aware of any of those cooperative agreements or permissive transfers.
Yeah, I think there might only be one. Oh gosh, what is it called? Is it Connections? Because we have Georgia Cyber and we have Connections, and then a lot of local systems have their own virtual schools or virtual ability to do some virtual instruction. So I know that I think one of them, I think it's Connections, is operating via the State Charter Schools Commission. And so I'm wondering if that contracting agreement would be the operative contracting agreement in terms of student enrollment, because I understand that they have specific student enrollment caps, or whether this would apply.
In lines 19 through 21 of the bill, permitted to attend be included as an enrolled student in the public schools of a local unit of administration other than the local unit of administration wherein the student resides for the purpose of allotting state funds. So unless it was something where a local school system was transferring that to the charter school partner, I
believe that they are a local unit of administration, but they have enrollment caps. And if you don't know, that's okay.
It's not a scenario that we considered with any of this. I mean, this was strictly intended to be a public school system to public school system transfer. So we were very clear not to get into the weeds on that level of detail with it. And when you and I had met on this earlier, you had also asked me the question on expense,
right.
what the tuition cost was. The virtual school system that we had talked about, the public school virtual system, estimated it to be around $10,000 annual cost. So that would mean that the family would have to cover the differential on that.
And then I think for our, I don't want to go, I know we've heard this a lot, but I know that with at least some of our virtuals, they actually only get 75% because they're not doing brick and mortar. But you're saying this would be inclusive of
It would just be the QBE transfer. So if it was a $6,600 transfer, then the family would have to come up with the difference on whatever that would be. And that's why we took out that equalization portion so that there wasn't more money leaving the local school system, the home district.
Thank you. Sorry, I have so many questions about this. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, Buddy was here if you wanted to speak to the bill as well with that.
Senator Zolzal.
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
We had one person here
Yeah,
to speak.
yeah. Buddy, please come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be extremely brief.
Microphone. Witness.
I'll be extremely brief. I just want to thank the committee. First of all, I just want to thank Senator Steele. We've been working together on this bill for 2 years, and he didn't know me from Adam. I represent the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders, and we feel like the bill that he's put forward was a very strong compromise. The equalization bill, the equalization portion being taken out, we felt like was fair to Lowell Systems. We just want to thank the senator for listening on that. And basically there are 3 versions of this bill, 2 in the House, 1 here. And it really represents a lot of what's going on in the state already in the sense that students may cross county lines and their QBE funds will travel with them, which is already occurring. And then the tuition that might be charged by those systems would be up to the parents and up to those systems. So it's really a great evolution of the bill. We just want to thank Senator Steele for his work with us.
Thank you so much. Working off of LC 491763S, and I believe we've got a motion.
Move to pass on LC 491763S, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Sims.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. One question about tracking. Who's responsible for the tracking of these students as they move about? I guess that's a concern of mine. How do we keep up with them?
As in ensuring that they're still enrolled in school somewhere?
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Buddy, are you still in the room? Yes, sir. Did you hear that question from Senator Sims? I did. That actually is something that we never did discuss. Would you mind taking the microphone to address that from that perspective?
So I believe
Witness.
if I understand the senator's question, Senator Sims, you're asking as students go back and forth across county lines, how is that tracked? So the fundamental mechanism of how that works is when a student chooses to go to another system, assuming that system has said, yes, you may come because it is up to the system currently and under this legislation, they would enroll in the school and then they would be reported in the FTE count at some point if they are there toward in that time, which occurs, as you know, twice a year in October and March. It is possible that a student could cross county lines and miss an FTE count, but they would be enrolled and there would be a student ID number that would be tracked by the State Department.
We did have one person sign up to speak, Michaela Arciaga.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michaela Arciaga. I'm the Georgia Director of Advocacy for IDRA. We are a nonpartisan, independent nonprofit. We do not oppose the spirit of this bill. I want to be very clear. I'm sorry I haven't had the chance to speak with you. We just had a few questions and concerns about how this would impact the existing processes, specifically around the discretion of a local district to be able to approve or deny an admission. If there's any guardrails or prohibitions around discriminatory practices in that way, if if the entire decision is left to the target district for discretionary admission, we're worried that this does not incentivize them to admit students with disabilities, students who are with a language learning status, or students of low socioeconomic status. That's the first concern. If there is language there, we've had a hard time tracking down policy around that process. The other concern is unintended impact on athletics. If this would allow a district who's targeting, per se, an athletic transfer, we know has been an issue in the past, and whether or not there are guardrails included in that process as well. Again, we don't oppose the process. We don't oppose the spirit of this. It's just a couple of quick concerns as far as how this might contribute to problems that we have seen in the past as far as transferring patterns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, second the motion.
We've got a motion and a second do pass for SB 147. All in favor, raise your hand. Oh, yeah, any discussion? Yeah. We got 4. All opposed. Motion passes 4-3. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. How are you doing today? What was your vote? Were you opposed or opposed? So it was a tie 4-4, and then I'll break the tie with a motion do pass, or a vote for do pass. So it passes 5-4. Moving on to SB 459, civics education. And I am presenting that bill. This is the Quality-Based Education Act. Has to do with teaching students civics in K through 12. The State Board of Education shall start in the school year of 2025 and 2026 to develop a comprehensive civics education for students from kindergarten through 12th grade. To prepare students to be civically knowledgeable and responsible adults to understand the importance of civic involvement in a constitutional republic. Such programs shall aid students in developing an understanding of shared rights, responsibilities of residents of the state, and of the founding principles of the United States. Be happy to take any questions from the committee. No questions from the committee. Chair would entertain a motion. We got.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is meant by civic-minded expectations of an upright and desirable citizenry that recognizes and accepts responsibility for preserving and defending the blessings of liberty? What does all that mean?
Essentially what it reads. It's, to give students understanding of civics here in the United States.
Oh, I'm all for that. I just don't understand what this lines 32 through 35 mean. I don't know what an upright and desirable citizenry means to, I feel like that's
The
subjective.
blessings of liberty from our forefathers, and that we live in the greatest country in the world.
Upright and desirable citizenry. To me, that's subjective, so I just don't know what you mean by that. That's my question.
Senator Setzler.
Mr. Chairman, if I could indulge the chair, I might make a stab at my thoughts to the lady's question, if I could.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think we're affirming that a free society has to have people that are largely, to the extent possible, self-governing where we can. If we're a citizenry that's not living upright and desirable lives that are noble and true and good, then we have to have police presence everywhere. There has to be a surveillance state. You have to have cameras on people. and that the idea of having a citizenry that not only is upright and largely self-governed, but accepts the responsibility that every citizen has. It's not just the government. It's not just the police powers that preserve order, but that every person accepts responsibility that no matter where you come from, no matter what your ethnic background is, no matter what zip code you live in, no matter what your adjusted gross income is, that everybody has a common understanding and responsibility to preserve the blessings we have. And Mr. Chairman, we had a thing in one of my high schools. It's a special needs dance that we bring special needs kids in with buses. And we do a prom for them. And you got bus after bus after bus coming in, and you got the varsity volleyball team and the football team all sort of doing a prom thing during work hours with kids. And the resources it takes to put that on are tremendous. I mean, it is a free society, a free enterprise system that cares about people and that cares about the dignity of every individual, that has the prosperity, the blessings of our system allow us to honor these special needs kids. You can't have that in a society that you enforce compliance by the police powers only. You have to have a self-governed, good culture. And I think that's something that this is trying to, that's what 32 through 35 means, in my opinion.
I think you made my point, Senator Setzler. What if I rattled off like 15 other things in addition to what you said? You're talking about your opinion. I want to know, what does this mean?
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, could I answer that?
Sure.
I mean, I think the people in this panel, even though there may be some gradations of what's the best of the best of the best and what may be second best, there may be some variability there, but I think this panel and the people in this room can have consensus about what a worthy, noble life is, and if we saw it, we'd recognize it. And that doesn't mean compliance, but I do think there's a sense in which people who are living an upright, desirable life of self-governance and personal responsibility, I think everyone in this room could recognize that, even though this room is very diverse. And so I do think there are certain standards of excellence and truth that we want to uphold that is essential to have a free society.
And I'd like to also add, just going back to line 19, that this is going to be set up by the State Board of Education, not one of us on this committee.
Well, that was actually going to be my follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because since we're instructing other people to do it, and these are vague and subjective terms, I just personally think that the bill is much clearer without 32 through 35. And with that in there, I feel like there's all kinds of questions that we're foisting on them, and there's no uniform understanding of what on earth that means. So I view that as problematic.
Thank you, Senator.
Excuse me. Was she saying that she? What
number are you on?
I am number. Pick a number. I just can't.
There you go.
I talk loud. No. It appears that she was maybe making a motion. Am I right? To abolish or to get rid of these lines that are questionable.
Well, I wasn't, Senator, but you're welcome to make the motion.
I so move.
I'll second it.
You can't do that until there's a...
Yeah.
I can't do it
And not until there's
We've got to have a vote on the bill itself.
in a minute.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Senator Steele?
If there are no motions for amendments other than just conversation, I was going to make a motion that do pass Senate Bill 459 LC 491709.
We've got a motion do pass. Do we have a second? We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Well,
raise your hand.
I think her now.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we exclude line 32 through 35 because it is not relevant. I mean, cannot be explained, and it will cause other problems in the future when you're trying to actually serve someone and find out their reasons, what they believe in this. Am I right, Madam Chair? She's looking at me, either laughing at me or smiling. I don't know. I hope it's a smile. But I do think that we need to remove that language.
Object.
We've got discussion. Senator Dolezal.
Mr. Chairman, I am going to ask the author of the amendment whether the issue is with the language that's in line 32, which is civic-minded expectations of an upright and desirable citizenry, or is the issue with what we see on line 33 through 35 for
Both.
preserving and defending. So you have a problem with students being taught to preserve and
Well,
defend the blessings of liberty inherited from prior generations and secured by the United States Constitution?
No, I don't, but I have a problem with the way it's worded. You can make yourself say anything. I'm talking about what do you really mean about it?
Well, that's why I'm wondering if your motion might be amended, if I would find it curious if anybody would vote against this, that we would actually change it to read an understanding of the blessings and liberty inherited from prior generations and secured by the United States Constitution.
That would make it clearer, but
And that would strike, that's why I was asking what y'all found to be nebulous, whether it was this civic-minded, the upright and desirable citizenry, or if there's actually the problem with the recognition of, or encouraging students to preserve and defend liberty and the Constitution.
for students to. What is the definition in the Constitution about that? Don't we already have it defined? What is liberty? What is justice? It's in the book already, right, Senator Donsley?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think what you're trying to ensure with this particular code, this particular part of the legislation, is that perhaps this is driven by concerns that the future generations of America may not, that they may need some help in understanding, as you say here, the blessings of liberty inherited from prior generations and secured by the United States Constitution, which I would say we probably all would agree is the greatest self-governance document ever written in the history of humankind.
I would hope so.
So what I'm trying to get on the record here is whether the reason for striking that is because we're trying to strike the desire for people to preserve and defend the blessings of liberty, or if we're trying to strike...
clarify the whole statement.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to you on this. I'd be happy to make a stab at some clarification that captures what I think your intent is, which would be by removing the upright and desirable citizenry, or I'd be happy to stand with you and vote this amendment down. I would defer to you on that.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear, as far as upright and desirable citizenry. We may have had some opinions going back and forth between two members, but I don't see where anything's murky or unclear with the statement. And like I said, it's not one of us on this committee that's going to be setting this up. It's the State Board of Education.
I move the previous question on the motion to amend.
Second.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's 14. I think everybody in this room, or certainly sitting up here, agrees that civics education is really important for our young people. Mm-hmm. And that without it, we just don't understand how to participate in what is a participatory democracy. I think the lines 32 through 35, though, do bring up certain other kinds of thoughts, even if it's not meant to, because I think I do understand what it is you're trying to say here. But when we say things like upright and desirable citizenry, that's a hard thing, I think, for those of us like me who, for the longest time, weren't part of that citizenry or considered upright or desirable. And so even though that's not the intention here, I grant you it's not, there are words in here that for those of us who think about the history of the country, we were challenged with like embracing this particular language, even if we agree with what it is from an intention standpoint you're trying to say here. So I think I like the idea of amending it because principally there's nothing else here that's creating any kind of problems or any kind of emotional response or anything like that. I mean, I think we all are in agreement that this is something that should pass, and we're ending up spending a lot of time talking about it only because of like this sentence. And so I would offer, so I support striking it altogether if you don't feel like it ultimately changes really what you're trying to accomplish. And I don't know that it does change what you're trying to do here if we don't say that. Or, on the other hand, if it's important to say an understanding of the civic-minded expectations, the other sentence here, the other piece of the phrase that kind of does, even for me, bring up some reservations, is the part about the blessings of liberty inherited from prior generations. It just is bringing up something for me, and I can't quite explain it, but I agree about, secured by the United States Constitution. Like there are only a few words in this sentence that kind of feel like funny. So I share that with the committee to just, so everybody here maybe understands that it's not in principle that I have a problem with the bill at all or what we're trying to achieve here, because I'm in agreement with that. But some of the word choices are the things that give me agita.
Thank you. Who's number 15?
That's me. I just wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, I really like the language on lines, 21 through 24 about prepare students to be civically knowledgeable and responsible adults and to understand the importance of civic involvement in a constitutional republic. I think all of us could get behind that. And just wanted to mention that I think that's pretty clear and gets to the intent of the bill, and this other language seems to be extraneous and vague and is causing discomfort. So just really wanted to echo my colleague on that, Senator Halpern. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask our legislative counsel to give us a ruling? Is that clear enough, what we're trying to do? I'm trying to abolish those lines because I think they're vague. And so I want your opinion. You're the person that works in our legislative council, right?
If I understand, there is a motion to amend pending to strike lines 32 through 35.
Correct.
If that were to, if that amendment were to be adopted, I would, other than a grammar switch that we would need to make on lines 29 and 31, I don't have any concerns or questions about the nature of that amendment. If that's the question that's on the table, I have
That was the question.
no concerns about the lady's amendment.
Senator Sessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think there's a difference, and I think there's a fair policy question here. I think it's I would defer to the chair's language, because I do think it's an important component of this to talk about an upright citizenry that both recognizes and accepts the responsibility for defending the blessings of liberty. It is not a governmental function. It's not just the power of the police state. It is both. We have to understand it and accept it in a free society. I think 32 and 33 are very important. I don't know why we would change it. Are there certain words in here that I think are more important than others? I think if the 9 people on this panel were all voting, we would probably all write this a little bit differently anyway. But I'm prepared to support the chair's motion. I think it's solid language that doesn't create any undesired, unintended consequence. I would also say to the lady to the lady's question, I don't think I don't read this to invoke anything pernicious. You think about the people that were our prior. I think it's very important to understand as we interpret the history of our nation, the things that were ugly about our past we have wholly rejected. And I think the idea that things existed in our past is not to say that the good traditions we carry forward aren't worthy. I think the things we see in our past that were wrong-minded, base, ugly, and to be rejected, I think I and this panel wholly rejects. And I don't think the fact that bad things happened in our past suggests that carrying forward our good traditions as a nation can't be separated from bad things that have happened, that we have decidedly overcome both in law and constitution and practice. I mean, we have an ugly past. There are many ugly things in our past in our nation, but I don't think that this somehow gins that up and tries to justify it. That's how I read it, Mr. Chairman.
Response.
All right, last question, then we're going to vote.
One of the things I think that we do have to recognize is our past and our present and our future. Like today, we are making history. Every day, we are passing laws, we are making history, and we are establishing new policy. I'm not intending to suggest that anybody on this panel does not reject the badness of the past, but I am saying that there are words that we use today or policies that we create today or history from the past that carries into today that also is the reason why you may be getting the response that you're getting to this particular sentence. And so it's not to suggest that there's anything pernicious intentionally here. It is just to say that there are systems that were put into place in the past from good people in the past that have had negative consequences that continue to follow us to this day. I mean, we can talk about that too if we want in civics education, but I think that largely civics education really is a conversation about participating in your community and participating in your government. And this sentence doesn't necessarily speak to that at all, the way that every other sentence in this bill does. Thank you.
Senator Dolezal.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to point out that I don't know how we can describe upright and desirable citizenry as subjective, which if it is subjective, then so is lines 23 and 22, which were lauded as being fine. Civically knowledgeable is no more clear. Responsible adult is no more clear than the language that you put forward further down in here of upright and desirable. So with that in mind, I would move that we call the previous question, which is the motion to amend, and subsequent to that, and then I'll move that we call the previous question, which is the motion to do pass.
Senator Sims.
Just quickly, and I want to approach this from a totally different angle. I am in the classroom as a teacher, very concerned about civics education, my approach to it. What is the curricula going to look like? What am I going to teach? And also, with there being so many restrictions being placed on curriculum or curricula, am I going to be able to keep my job, not be punished if I happen to say the wrong thing, use the wrong materials? Will this become the job of the state board? So I'm approaching it from a totally different angle, because right now the material is a little vague. And can we truly define what we want our children to know about civics education? That was a part of my major many, many years ago. So there's loads of information. But we want our children to understand the importance of this country. It is the greatest country, and we don't want to live anywhere else in this world. Why? What are the reasons for? And how do we treat each other regardless to who we are? What contributions can we make as citizens? What are our responsibilities as citizens of these United States? I guess those are the things that we want to hear, or that we expect our teachers to impart upon our students. Is that it?
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I say that, no better, body than the State Board of Education setting up those parameters, not a partisan group of legislators. So I think it's, well written,
and to
detailed
make
enough.
certain that these are teachers. The thing that we do as a committee and as a state, we leave the practitioners out of the process, the people that have to teach. I was talking to a group this morning, and I don't mean to to go on and on, but those individuals that are in the classrooms that have to deal with the students, the parents, the communities, they're the ones that need to address these concerns and help with the curricula. We do politicize it. We probably don't mean to, but by virtue of the fact that we're sitting here doing this, is a huge political process of civics education. So we need to really involve our teachers. They're not going to make mistakes. They're not going to do anything that they're not supposed to.
Thank you. We're going to move on. We've got a motion and a second for an amendment to the bill from Senator James. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Fails 5-4. Moving on to the underlying bill, we've got a motion to pass and a second. All in favor of the bill, raise your hand. All opposed? Bill passes 5-4. Moving on to SB 492, Senator Williams. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Come to you before you today, the Senate Bill 490. Senate Bill 492 is probably the simplest, shortest bill that you will ever see that can make a difference between life and death. All this bill states in establishing routes for school buses. A public school system shall ensure that any stop at which a student is required to enter or exit the school bus is located upon the same side of the roadway as the door to the bus. Little Miss Adeline Pierce, just a few weeks ago, was going to get on the bus for the 3rd grade, as she had done in the 1st and 2nd grade. Her mother, here with me, her twin sisters, watched her go to get on the bus. And we're here because of this tragic accident, a careless mistake, someone coming and not stopping their car for a little girl to get on the bus. Was she distracted? Was her vision obscured? Was she changing the station on her radio? Was she texting? We don't know. But we do know a life was taken that day unnecessarily. I just listened to you debating on what is taught in schools to children. This child won't have the opportunity to learn any of what you've just debated. To some, education stopped this day, and it stopped. No more school, no more recess, no more PTA, no more class trips, no more class pictures. Graduation will never come for Addie. Her life stopped in the 3rd grade. She was crossing the street to get on the bus. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, and I know this is tough. Some school systems may not like having to try to figure out how to keep children from crossing the road to get on the bus. But you know what? If we don't get them to school, they can't learn. And that child's safety and our children's safety is of paramount importance. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing the bill. I was not aware of this situation until today, and I think we're all stand in solidarity with you and the heartbroken nature of what it was that happened. Three of my 4 kids ride the bus to school, and I can't imagine living through that tragedy. I received from our Director of Transportation in Forsyth County Schools concern about this bill, and not concern of a I can't find the word, an inconvenience, but actually concern of safety. And if it's okay, I would like just to highlight a couple of things that he said in an email that was sent to our Board of Education that was then forwarded to me. He says, although well-intended, neither I nor the other transportation directors in Metro Reza would be in favor of this bill. The primary concern is that this bill would not make students safer. It may have the opposite effect. With this bill, instead of crossing the street supervised by a bus driver with the lights and safety equipment available on the school bus at a set bus stop location, students potentially would be in the position of crossing streets to get to bus stops on their own before the bus arrives or after it leaves the area. All bus stops have to meet requirements for safety, distance, and visibility that ensures the bus driver and students at the bus stop are in safe locations to load and unload the bus. Supervised street crossings at regular set bus stop locations following these bus stop safety guidelines while supervised by the bus driver is a safer option for all students, and the option all of our bus drivers have been trained to execute every day. If the law required it in order to set bus stops in a way that would ensure no student crossed the street to access a school bus stop, districts like ours would be required to reroute all current bus routes and reset hundreds of bus stops as well as add hundreds, if not thousands. Creating new bus stops and new bus routes at this scale creates a level of newness and uncertainty that would impact safety for drivers, students, and the general public. For us, safety of all of these stakeholders is based on common shared expectations and consistency of the routine. And what I skipped that he said earlier, that may be worth, I guess, reading into the record here, is that this accident happened where a motorist violated and broke the law, drove through an extended stop arm at a bus stop earlier this year when the bus was stopped and the student was crossing the streets. That may get to your speculation that it was a distracted driver situation. I raise that to just, I guess, ask you to opine on this particular transportation expert's feedback that while well-intended, this bill may have the opposite intent and may actually put more students in peril than they are currently. I'd just be curious your feedback on that.
Well, I can certainly respect their opinion, but we're talking about Henry County. We're talking about 159 counties. And this was what, Gwinnett County?
This was Forsyth County.
Forsyth County. Forsyth County has more money to spend on children's transportation than most of the counties around the state. I understand it might be difficult for them to figure it out, but Addie's still not here. And how many other children have we lost? How many more will we lose?
Well, Senator, I think that his concern is that this may actually have the opposite of the intended effects. And my question was specifically to that. And I guess my follow-up question would be, have you discussed this with any transportation director in any district and received their support? Or was this something that was kind of your best answer to solving the problem?
It's my best answer in solving the problem, especially in rural Georgia. And that is something that the only way that we can see that we can figure this out, because those arms on that bus, when they go out, won't stop the car coming. There's nothing to stop it. There's nothing to protect the child. The school bus driver, they're sitting in the seat, they're throwing the lights, they're listening to kids. And we just read in the news where a child suffered a concussion by being beat up on a school bus. Just what is the answer going to be, Senator? I'm trying to wrap my head around it too, and I thank you for the question. But what I'm looking at, even if we have to put an effective date to give these counties time to figure this out, with the artificial intelligence that they have now, they can figure this out so that no child has to cross that road. Whatever it takes. What is a life worth? What is a child's life worth?
Okay. I think there's other questions.
Leader Gooch.
Yeah. So my thoughts are sort of in line with what Senator Dolezal was mentioning. My family has a long history of bus drivers, and just looking at it from a rural Georgia perspective, which is where I'm from, you have literally hundreds of miles of county roads and state routes. If you read your bill, lines 13 through 15, there are no exceptions to the rule. So every road in every county where a child lives would have to be driven on essentially twice. So you would almost double the amount of distance every bus drives every day. And so currently, most bus drivers leave their home at 6 a.m., pick up their first child by 6:20 or 6:30, some earlier than that. You could essentially double the drive time for a bus driver, which means that bus would have to leave as early as 5 a.m. in the morning to start picking the children up. So I think unless you double the number of buses or you stagger start times for schools, I mean, there's a lot of logistic issues, I think, that need to be thought about on a bill like this. And believe me, I've heard similar conversations my entire life at home with my parents and other members of my family who have driven buses. And they do talk about that gate open and that arm swinging out, kids running across without looking.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of near misses, many more than we've heard about. So I think there is a problem, but I'm not sure that this will solve it. And I think logistically, the school systems will not be prepared to take this law,
Well-
and be able to implement it. So we need to think about it a little bit longer before we adopt it, I believe. But I do sympathize with the family and all the other families that have suffered losses and injuries. I know there's a lot of them out there.
A lot of it has happened, you're right, Ms. Leader, thank you. And if we need an effective date down the road for more study, or a study committee to be appointed to study this, to figure out exactly what we need to do, must do, because of my background in the business that I'm in, I have attended too many children's funerals
Sure.
that have happened because of this. And whatever it takes to be proactive in the future, to make sure this doesn't happen in the future, I would certainly like to do. Whether it's an amendment to appoint a study committee to look at this, to work with these school systems to figure out the best way to address this, whatever it takes, I'm open to it, and I thank you very much.
Agree with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the study committee would be a great idea to
Turn my mic on. Senator, thank you for bringing this forward. As far as the tragic loss of Addie's life, no piece of legislation or anything that could make up for that tragic event that happened this year. And I'm so sorry for your loss. But I do want to, make sure that we don't create any unintended consequences. And, here in the legislature, a lot of times we refer to legislation as being a marathon, not a sprint, because we do want to make sure that we perfect it and get everything correct. So this is not the end. This is just the beginning. We want to make sure that we vet this out and make sure that the bill is perfected before we move it forward. But we will continue to work on this. So we'll just have a hearing today and continue to work on this together.
Okay, what would be the step to get a study committee to work on this? Can you, Mr. Slater? Do you have an
resolution.
idea?
If you there you go. I would go to Ledge Council today, go ahead and draft a resolution, tell them, and bring it to us. We'll all sign that. So
Thank you.
it's a very important issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Moving on to SB 365, Senator Dolezal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this esteemed committee. I bring before you Senate Bill 365. The germination of this was in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I want to thank Brad Vaughn for asking me to help carry this bill. There's really three sections of this bill, the first one of which resonates with me greatly, that essentially requires school systems to have an opt-in that allows parents to opt in to be notified what materials their child checks out of a library. This is something that Forsyth County Schools actually implemented. I believe it was last semester. If it wasn't last semester, it was last year. That has been well received by our community, and that is something that this bill would then take that statewide. The second piece of this bill clarifies, if you recall, we put in place a couple years ago a complaint resolution to address complaints submitted by parents or guardians as it relates to harmful material. And this essentially, the section of the bill essentially clarifies that these provisions apply to any written or electronic material that a child receives. And then lastly, the final section of this bill clarifies and really puts a Georgia standard as it relates to what a record is right now. Our code points to federal law. And what we do is we outline in lines 41 through 50 of this bill, what is included in those records, and essentially establishes that parents have the right to receive any records that relate to their child. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we've got a few folks signed up to speak. We've got, first up is Brooke Mells, and then Mike Griffin's on deck. I'm going to keep this at 2 minutes as we get into our education committees that we've got bills lined up, and we want to try to make sure we get to all of them.
Good afternoon. Great to be speaking here. I have a few concerns about this bill. I appreciate the concern for what materials are being consumed in schools, but the standard used for harmful to minors is very unclear, and I think it could go sideways. There's no definition in Georgia State Code for harmful to minors. There is no definitions for this standard within the bill, and unfortunately, this standard is entirely subjective. What could be harmful to minors? Is it Clorox bleach? Is it violent video games? Some people have argued that me as an LGBT individual is harmful to minors, and I have worked in education before teaching computer science. So would that mean I fall under the jurisdiction of this bill? It's unclear what this definition stands for, and I would like it to be clarified so it's a little less subjective. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Griffin, and then Taylor Hawkins, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Mike Griffin. I'm the Public Affairs Representative with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we appreciate the Senator bringing forth this legislation, and we strongly agree with it, and we do think that everything that we do that helps secure the importance of the authority and responsibility of parental rights is very important. So we would encourage the committee's favorable support on this legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
We've got Taylor Hawkins. We've got Nan Brown, Eric Baker. The two of y'all signed up together. Aaron. Oh, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing us today. We are here on behalf of Georgia Library Media Association to express practitioners' concerns about this bill. First of all, everything in this bill is already accessible to parents. Parents, if they have their student's ID and password, they can see everything their child both has checked out and has access to in the circulation system for print materials. A lot of our concerns relate to unclear language in this bill because many times you mention electronic and print materials, and media specialists don't have control over the digital materials. There's no way we could notify you when parents check out a book from Sora or check out a book. A lot of times the public library systems have agreements with the school libraries they can check out public library materials with a card directly, and there's no way for us to either maintain that. This bill is very concerning in light of the other bill we're going to talk about, 154, because we don't have access to what's in our libraries. We didn't purchase it. We don't control Galileo. Not that I think any of that would meet the definition of obscene materials, but that is very concerning. We also, would the parent have responsibility for notifying us when their email changed? Okay, we notify of late records, and we get bounce backs all the time. There's no clarification of what happens if it bounces back, because that would be a definite burden to us. So those are our lines, 2021 and 24 and 25. Genre is specified. Not every library, not every book has a genre, so that is something we just couldn't include in there. because not everybody records it in their circulation system. And then at the end, the records, we are concerned about that in lines 47 through 49 and 53 through 55, because this says records relating to any written or electronic materials, classroom materials, school library materials, whatever, it then deletes the cannot reasonably made available. House Bill 1041 in 2020 called for people to have a list of everything in the library. We don't have a list of everything that is accessible. The digital records are updated continuously. Databases, research databases, all of that. That would be an unreasonable request, but this strikes out not being a reasonable request as a reason to not have it. I really encourage parent responsibility for their own child's reading, and that is already there. And this bill, I feel, would potentially damage a trust relationship between a parent and a child, especially in adolescence. I've worked in middle and high schools for 19 years. Children will work around this if they know their parent, if there's something their parent that objects to, they will either get someone else to check it out, because we know that happens when they have met their limit already, or they will just take it. Some of them might take it and bring it back, but having parents know, maybe combining with some of these media literacy, social media bills and all that, maybe combining parent awareness of these resources, how to access them, how to navigate them, would be a better solution than this.
Thank you. We got Nora. Oh.
This is Erin.
Hey, Erin, how you doing? I am going to keep it at 2 minutes.
Okay, absolutely. I've got you.
We've got a lot of folks that want to
Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks for your time today. My name is Erin Baker. I have been an educator since 2000. I have 2 children who attend Georgia Public Schools, and I'm a representative of Georgia Library Media Association and PAGE. I'm here today to voice opposition to Senate Bill 365, as I see it as an obstacle to fluid instruction. Parents already have access to and full disclosure of library materials and their students' checkout histories via online library catalogs. This additional government overreach at our local level causes undue demands on school personnel, distracts from the most important work of educators, which is delivering quality instruction, also places constraints on the freedom of inquiry and expression pertinent to education. Any legislation that does not directly support the goal of teaching is in opposition to it. So I would ask that you please align your efforts to support teachers in their tireless work of preparing students rather than building barriers and obstacles to what we do each day. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora? We got Tracy Nance on deck.
Hello, good afternoon. I want to confirm I'm also on the list for 154. Okay, I put a slash, so I didn't know. All right. Well, thank you all so much for allowing testimony on this. My name is Nora Benavides. I serve as Senior Counsel and Director of Digital Justice and Civil Rights at the media reform organization Free Press. I also am here in my capacity as a legislative co-chair of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. I've been a First Amendment lawyer for about a decade now, and I'm here to speak a little bit about 365 as well as 154. I am eager at any moment after this to work with the sponsors and to try to get the language right. In particular, 365 concerns me because of what is vague language around harmful to minors. And from a First Amendment perspective, this will do a number of things, namely chill free expression and produce some problematic issues regarding the vagueness of that provision. the language of harmful to minors is open in many ways for interpretation, whatever one views as harmful based on who that is, who is in power, who the governing bodies are at any moment. From the legal standard itself, vagueness has a number of things that it implicates. The vagueness inquiry must be stricter, however, when it implicates or would inhibit the exercise of constitutionally protected rights. And the limit on what books one might read based on the approval process or visibility to their parents implicates students' free expression and free speech rights. In short, I believe that this, as I will also comment on 154, pose a number of problems from a First Amendment perspective. I'm eager to speak more with you. Thank you.
Thank you. You got a question, Senator Dolezal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Counselor, thank you for being here. I just want to clarify, unless I'm missing something, this bill does not define harmful to minors. That was done previously. The first speaker that spoke may not be familiar with the fact that this is defined previously in code. Of course, you would understand our state law just points essentially to the three-prong Miller test. What this bill actually does is just clarifies what material that previously existing code section applies to. It just, and in fact, doesn't apply to the parent notification on the checkout process. Those are two separate sections of this bill. So, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that you would agree that perhaps you have a problem with the bill that we passed a couple years ago, but that this bill does not do anything in terms of defining harmful to minors. It just defines what material is actually subject to, clarifies what material is subject to that law. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would say as applied, what material is constituted as harmful to minors is open then to interpretation. And that, again, implicates the First Amendment and free expression rights of students.
Senator Sessler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here. I'm going to follow up on what Senator Dolezal said. So the Miller test has been fleshed out quite a bit in case law. Is that not true?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And there have been a lot of cases that have applied the Miller test, and some have fallen on the side of, quote, harmful to minors, and other things have fallen outside of that definition. And that's been pretty well exercised in our courts. Is that not true?
Well, in many courts that has been fleshed out.
Okay.
Also at the federal level, we have a strong definition of what obscenity is, what other pornographic material, language that has been from our federal Supreme Court fleshed out for lower court levels. So it is actually a little more nuanced. And in Georgia courts, in the federal states, the federal courts here in Georgia, that differs from elsewhere around the country.
Okay. But there's a robustness to that. You know, we could certainly, in statute, we could take 2 pages and we could write some case law into statute that fleshes out the Miller test and even bring in some language to really define it very, very clearly. But I wanted the people who are listening here to hear this is not really about vagueness. I mean, the Miller test is well fleshed out. There's a lot of case law around it. Isn't it true that it's just you have a frontal, just, I mean, and it's we have differences of opinion here, but you have a sort of a front-on policy objection to this that's not tied to vagueness.
Well, I have a number of objections to the bill. And part of what I see writ large is that this is part of a larger national and Georgia trend to try to limit access. The logical endpoint of where this bill, as well as others, are taking us is for children to have less exposure to ideas. What we know about is that exposure to ideas and to a variety of literature and culture help shape people to become upright citizens of this wonderful constitutional republic, which I know you spoke about earlier today. So this is not about a difference of opinion when it comes to policy alone. This is about a difference in where the law ultimately takes us if what we are doing is instituting regulatory schemes that limit and make children afraid to read books.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to keep moving. We've got several speakers.
Thank you.
Tracy, Nance, thank you for coming.
Yes, I'm available after, and I'll be back. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Tracy Nance, and I am a parent, an educator, as well as the 2020 and 2021 Georgia Teacher of the Year. I'm coming today just to bring some issues of kind of practicality and some potential unintended consequences that I'd like to bring to your attention. When I first started teaching back in 2006, I knew that the key to my student success was going to be to have my classrooms absolutely scream literacy. To that end, on my very small public school teacher income, I purchased numerous books, begged for books. Now, in fact, I have over 1,700 books in my classroom library, and that is absolutely one of the reasons for my kids' success. Now, when I first started being a novice teacher, I thought, I need to protect these books I just bought. Let's have a checkout system. Well, my plan very quickly unraveled. It was untenable. It created a bottleneck, and it created two very important problems. The first one being, I was burned out. And that is also true here in the state of Georgia. In fact, in this room, we have top 10 finalists for Georgia Teacher of the Year who were a member of the superintendent's team for putting together a report on teacher burnout. It's true that today, only 22% of Georgia teachers say that they would recommend teaching to people in the future because of this. The second unintended consequence is that my students could not get books in their hands fast enough. It just didn't work. So I got rid of it. What I do want to tell you, though, is that there are already guardrails there. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission requires highly qualified, certified teachers in order to help select those processes. We also have guardrails in terms of curriculum transparency. My very first principal told me, Tracy, our practice may not be perfect, but it is absolutely public. To that end, I'd like to invite the members of this committee to consider, rather, continuing to welcome parents to come into the classroom. Come see any book in my library, absolutely any one of them. Literacy research continues to prove that one of the most important building blocks to our kids' literacy and their success is the ability to select books, to follow their student interest. It is absolutely critical, and I think that this creates an untenable, overwhelming burden on administrators as well as teachers. At some point, they're going to say, well, why do I even have a library anymore? I've been paying for all those books to be in storage while I take a sabbatical, and it's costing about $300 a month. And I would very much love to hold on to those books and make sure that Georgia's kids get to read them. Thank you.
We got Rhea. Is Rhea in the audience? And then our last speaker, Nayla North. I said that correct. I hope I did. And that'll wrap us up. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi all. My name is Rhea Wunsch. I'm a student at Georgia State University. I'm a Cobb County native and currently live in DeKalb County. Before I start talking about this bill, I would love to show y'all my Cobb County library card. I got it when I was 10 years old with parental consent, because if you are a minor in Cobb County, you need parental consent to get a public library card. I have been a loyal patron of Georgia's libraries for as long as I can remember, and I grew up learning how to read in my Nickajack Elementary School library. Without the resources that were available in that library, I would not have been an educated person. I would not have been able to sit here in front of y'all and talk about why the library is important. And as y'all are discussing these bills, not only SB 365, but also other bills that are on the table today, I would love y'all to encourage accessibility in our public libraries, as well as not put any pressure on librarians or put any of our librarians at risk for things that are not their fault or their responsibility at all. Bills like this bill would, the language in this bill is very vague and impractical and would harm our librarians rather than making learning and reading more accessible for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. You said you were a college student?
Yes, sir.
Great speaking.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming. That wraps it up for the testimony. Any comments or questions from the committee? Oh, what's that? Oh, never mind. I've got one more. My apologies. Come on forward.
Hello. Thank you for taking time to talk with us today. My name is Nala North, and I am currently a student at Georgia State University as well. As a student who grew up with ADHD, it was very, very hard to convince me to learn. My mom used to have to implement 10-minute increments for me to have fun breaks in order to stay focused. When I finally did discover books that I did find intriguing, the library became one of the only fun ways to learn, as well as a chance for my family to finally get time to stay still. We were a lower income family, and this was a perfect opportunity to not only get me to sit still, but also to be learning about myself and the world around me in the process. In my early teens, it was essential for me to have access to these books because it allowed me to grow as a person and as a student when processing and focusing was always a challenge for me. I was very lucky to have a mother who was patient and worked with me through this. However, not all students are as lucky, and reading books is one of the very few ways that they can figure out how to navigate having a learning difficulty. I fear that passing SB 365 will cause students to filter their reading selection in fear of their parents' judgment and possibly retaliation, thus stunting opportunities for personal growth and educational growth. Please help set students up for success by allowing them to decipher information and make choices for themselves to build a better future for them as individuals and our state long term. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Senator Steele. I believe we've got one last speaker that signed up late. Buddy? 154, okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to pass Senate Bill 365, LC 491588.
Second.
Got a motion to pass and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Passes 5-4.
We didn't have any discussion before. I just want to say I believe parents, it was stated earlier, have a right to know what their kids are taking in. I think it's a simple principle, and I think using technology, it's available. This is not an impossible to implement thing. Appreciate the chair.
I too, Mr. Chairman, thank you, had a item for discussion, which is that we did hear testimony that parents already can access all this, and that this other piece of it that this would require is totally unworkable. So I had a question for the author about that, but I'll just get with him offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 12, I couldn't remember what. Right. Go ahead, later.
I wanted to follow up similar to the comments of Chairman Setzler. I think most of us in this committee are parents first and legislators second. And decisions we make up here aren't for any particular group of people, political party or affiliation, race or what have you. It's because we listen to our constituents in our districts. I think we have superior school systems in our state. School teachers go way above and beyond. They get up early in the morning and stay late at night. I have family members who have taught their entire careers, but I fail to understand the pushback from employees of a public school system who doesn't think parents have a right or an opportunity to ask questions or learn. And I get what some of the comments were, that this information may already be available, but everyone has work responsibilities as we go in every day and night. Our parents work full-time jobs today. When we were growing up as children, one of our parents may have been at home. They were more involved in our schools. Today, you don't seem to have time to do that. So I think as technology evolves and makes opportunities for parents to be more engaged in their children's lives, we need to embrace that change in that technology. And I can't understand the resistance of allowing parents to know what their children are seeing, doing, and participating in while they're at school, especially in a public school system. These are the kinds of things that drives people toward private schools and even vouchers. So I want to say out there, thank you for the school teachers that do what you do, but we have to represent what's in the best interest of our children, and the parent makes that decision first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. All right, what we're going to do, we've got a hard stop at 4, but I've got a subcommittee set up by Chairman Steele that will start at 4 p.m. in this room. So what I was going to do is have SB 154, if I could have Chairman Dolezal present and then we'll have testimony that will start up in the subcommittee to keep things moving, because after this week, either committee bills are out of committee or they go away for the year, as we have crossover next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I bring before you Senate Bill 154 as a committee sub. In its original form, Senate Bill 154 was a one-word change, striking the word school on line 15. I want to read upstream of that just so we know what that's talking about. It says the provisions of Code Section 16-12-103 shall not apply to any public library operated by the state or any of its political subdivisions, nor to any public library operated as a part of any school, college, or university. And just to ensure that we're talking about what we're actually talking about, I want to talk about 16-12-103. And for the benefit of the committee, I'll read you what that section is. That not schools that are exempt from this, but only school libraries that are exempt for this. So conceivably on school grounds, we have two separate operating laws, two separate standards of what minors have access to. They have access to something today in the library that they may not, they potentially would have access to something in the library legally, that they would not legally have access to in the classroom, that they would not legally have access to on the school bus, that they would not legally have access to in a friend's home. Section 16-12-103 reads that it shall be unlawful for any person knowingly to sell or loan for monetary consideration or otherwise furnish or disseminate to a minor, 1, any picture, photograph, drawing, sculpture, motion picture, film, or similar visual representation or image of a person or portion of the human body which depicts sexually explicit nudity, sexual conduct, or sadomasochistic abuse, and which is otherwise harmful to minors. Section 2 is similar, any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed matter, however reproduced, or sound recording which contains any matter enumerated in paragraph 1 that I just read, or of this subsection, or explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual assault, excitement, sexual conduct, or sadomasochistic abuse, and which, taken as a whole, is harmful to minors, which gets to the Miller test we talked about earlier. This I found to be particularly interesting. Paragraph or section B of this says that it shall be unlawful for any person knowingly to sell or furnish to a minor or admission ticket or pass, or knowingly to admit a minor to premises upon wherein there is exhibited a motion picture show or other presentation which, in whole or in part, depicts sexually explicit nudity, sexual conduct, sadomasochistic abuse, and which is harmful to minors, or exhibit any such motion picture at any such premises which are not designed to prevent viewing from any public way of such motion picture by minors and not admitted to any such premises. As I read this, you can, in a library, distribute tickets to a minor for them to go view material that they would not otherwise be able to view under any section of the law. I think that if we zoom out for a second, and rather than think about what this bill does, if we think about what we would do if we were crafting a bill from scratch, what would we do as it relates to schools and school libraries if we were to start from scratch and craft a new law? I don't think that we would have a carve-out for libraries that didn't exist for the classroom. I don't think that we would legally allow minors to access something from an adult on the playground to not access something on a playground that they could access in a school library. So I would submit that regardless of if you agree with where I am going with this bill, I would submit that we can agree that this needs to be looked at. And that if you were to start at a foundational level, that the law as it exists today has problems, and that this is my attempt to solve that problem. What this committee sub did, members of the committee, if you look at lines 19, it's another one-word change. Because what my friend in the room from the AJC is going to do is he's going to go write an article how I am trying to throw librarians in jail. And that is not the intent of this bill. The language on line 19 clarifies that a violation of this code section would not be one of negligence, but would be one of intent. And that is an attempt to further clarify that. The goal of this bill is to go upstream of the procurement process and to ensure that we are not allowing things in our libraries that cause anyone to ever have to face any sort of criminal prosecution. I think that we would all agree that if teachers, principals, school counselors in a classroom or on the street corner were to give material to our children that was harmful to them under the law in any other capacity, that should be something that we try to prevent. And this bill recognizes that for my 3 children who attend a public elementary school, that there is nothing that they should have access to in their school library, legally under the law, that they would not have access to at a friend's home on a Saturday, at a soccer game on a Sunday, or anywhere else. So I know there's a lot of people that have comment on this bill, Mr. Chairman, so I will get out of the way and let them come and speak to this bill.
Thank you for your presentation. And as I stated earlier, we've got a subcommittee that's going to be chaired by Senator Still that starts up in this room immediately following this hearing. I'm going to move SB 154 to that subcommittee to give the folks that have signed up to testify today. And then we've got a whole committee meeting tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock where we'll pick back up where we left off. There'll be 4 bills that I'm going to assign to that subcommittee. The first one will be SB 154. Then I will also assign SB 438, SB 423, and SB 432. So it'll be those 4 bills in the subcommittee. The chairman there will take a vote on those, and then they will be referred back up to the whole committee that will meet again tomorrow. Thank you all for coming today, and we are adjourned.